Welcome back, my friends. It is Saturday, September 8th, 2018, 5:46 p.m. And you are looking at our all disturbances screen, and we now have officially three active tropical storms in the Atlantic Ocean. We have Florence, we have Isaac, and Helene. And for those of you that don't know the naming protocol, whichever becomes a tropical storm first gets the next name on the list. That is why you see Isaac in front of Helene. Helene was actually a tropical storm first, so it got the letter H, and then just in the last hour, Isaac was officially named a tropical storm. We will talk about those in a minute, but guys, we're getting closer and closer to crunch time with Florence. They are actually currently in preparations for this storm. Preparations meaning that there has already been state of emergency declared by the governors of North Carolina and South Carolina as this storm approaches the south area of the East Coast. That is where these models are showing this storm not only going, but rapidly intensifying in strength. Now, Florence, although still a tropical storm as of now, we have risen 5 miles per hour since yesterday and dropped in pressure. Now, in my opinion, this will become a Category 1 hurricane again tonight as it gets itself away from those shear wind event that we were dealing with earlier in the last couple days. Now, it has almost passed through that, and we are beginning to see the reshape of this storm. The counterclockwise motion is continuously there. We can clearly see that. And what you're going to see in the coming hours as far as this chart goes is this red area is going to become bigger and bigger. And then within the next 24 to 30 hours, I believe we will get our eye back, which means we're going to be in full-blown hurricane status again. And then after that, we need to worry about just how quickly this thing's going to intensify. Now, I have multiple sources pulled up here showing that we still have the possibility of this storm reaching a Category 4 status as it approaches the area of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Now, there is a little bit of information we need to talk about that determines where this storm is going to go, and that all has to do with pressures. Now, I've mentioned in other videos that my brother is actually a Navy meteorologist for the past 25 years. He sent me some public information. It's completely out there for the public to look at, but it gives a pretty good explanation about what's going to determine where this storm goes. As we look at the spaghetti plots here, once again, as I say almost daily, they are just getting tighter and tighter, and basically almost guaranteeing a landfall of some sort. There are still models that are showing a skim, but the only issue with that is even with this skim, some of these models are showing the storm sitting in one spot for about 48 hours. And if that's the case, we could be dealing with devastating flooding in whichever area this thing chooses to go. I'm going to tell you right now, the European model has this thing beelining straight into Georgia and South Carolina still. They have been confident in that for the last couple days now. The European or the Canadian model is getting pretty similar to that as well, as it's showing a landfall closer to the South Carolina and North Carolina areas. And then the GFS and the new version of the GFS are both showing a little bit more of a northern hook, which would put North Carolina and Virginia at risk, as well as South Carolina. So there is no surprise to me why the governors of South and North Carolina have already declared state of emergency. They are fairly confident that this storm will indeed dramatically affect the coastlines, at least, of their states. I will not be surprised to see Florida and Virginia join that group as far as state of emergency goes as we get into the next 5 days. So we are basically 5 days out from this storm either making landfall or just being off the coast of one of these southeastern states. Now, there's a few things going on here that are going to aid in this storm being pretty bad. And this is one of them. You can notice this giant trough here. This thing goes from Mexico all the way up through basically the middle of the eastern part of the U.S., the Ohio River Valley, you can say right over the Great Lakes and then into the northeast. Where I am in Pennsylvania, it's currently raining right now. Now, we are completely saturated. There's been flooding going on for days and days all around the Great Lakes. No more room for the water to go except for flood. And this is a separate system than what we're going to be dealing with Gordon. But the issue is once, or not Gordon, I'm sorry, Florence. Gordon is actually part of this, believe it or not. As you can see right here, Gordon is actually moving through the middle of the country and then is going to be followed or actually pushed into this trough that I just showed you right here, which is going to add even more moisture to this trough, bringing more rain to every one of these states. So not only is it raining inland with a lot of water and a lot of flooding, then once Hurricane Florence makes its way up to the southern states, it's almost going to use this as fuel. You're going to start seeing some of this moisture being pulled down in this direction, and it's going to be almost a fuel source for the hurricane. And there's some models, like I said, that have this thing sitting here for almost 48 hours just spinning right off the coast. And for any of those areas on the coast, that is just going to be, I mean, the word devastating comes to mind when a hurricane is just going to sit outside with the outer bands continuing to hit land over and over again. And then, like I said, the European model has it coming beeline straight into the U.S. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I have a bit of a wider view here so we can see the Atlantic Ocean and we can see this big moisture trough. And if I back this up, we could see how it kind of formed and the different areas this storm wants to go. Now, we have Florence right here. We have Isaac here, and this is Helene right here. This was before they were both declared tropical storms. As we move forward, you can clearly see they have taken on that typical shape. Boom, Isaac and Helene here, both tropical storms. As of right now, Isaac is projected to take a southern path towards the Leeward Islands, so we're going to keep an eye on that storm. So you're looking at Florence right here, finally basically rebuilding itself after that shear wind event. And now what you're going to see is a slow dip to the south, and then you're going to see its approach as it comes up in this direction. And that is where the pressures are going to take over and determine where in the U.S. this thing is either going to make landfall or where it's going to sit. Regardless, this storm is going to affect the east coast of the U.S. There's no doubt about it. But the closer it gets to this trough of moisture here, which is just completely massive, this thing is absolutely huge, covering many states, many thousands and thousands of square miles, just getting rain poured down onto it. I want to show you in a couple different charts why this is happening. Now, this is a chart that my brother sent me. He, like I said, he's a meteorologist for the Navy. He's currently doing aviation work for the Navy, so he gets access to certain charts that I'm not allowed to see, and then there's charts that he is allowed to send me, and this is one of them. And it goes through a GIF process, so you got to bear with me as I try to explain this. But you see Florence here. Now, we're following the path of Florence, and when you see these ridges here, these are basically like pressure bubbles. So what these two ridges here are doing is it's forcing Florence in a direction. So once I'm going to let this roll through one more time, and I'll explain it a little quicker as it begins the beginning of the GIF. It should be right after this screen. Here we go. Now you're going to see a ridge pop up right here. Here's that first pressure. Here's that second pressure. That's what's forcing Hurricane Florence to go in this direction here. And then as it gets in that area, you're going to see another ridge build in this area. And this is the ridge that needs to be looked at and monitored very closely, because the further to the east this ridge goes, the more Florence is going to want to hook up into this direction. Now, the farther this ridge sticks into the U.S., that's what's going to keep it forced downward towards the Southern California or South Carolina and the Georgia states. So we still have time, even though we're within that 5-day range where the projections get tighter and tighter and more confident. This one ridge here is going to be the determining factor of where exactly this storm is going to go in these southern states. Again, that is the reason why I'm saying that North Carolina and South Carolina may not be the only states that declare state of emergency in the coming days, especially with the info showing that Florence is going to rapidly intensify. Guys, we could be talking about a Category 4 storm at landfall, which is it would be devastating. I don't know of any other word to say but devastating. So I would expect evacuations in the coming days as this storm approaches and they get a much better idea of where this is going to hit. And now, with that said, let's look at the models. These are the current models. They're all very, very similar as of right now, guys. So we're going to start with the European model. And this is the one I said that has Florence basically beelining right into Georgia and South Carolina. You could see by the 13th, we almost have landfall. South Carolina and North Carolina actually being those main areas. And as we move into the 14th, you could see that the storm is completely engulfed over those states now. So this could be one of the big reasons why the state of emergency has already been declared. The European model has been pretty accurate lately. We can clearly see Isaac and Helene behind it. Isaac, again, wanting to take that southern route through the Leeward Islands. And then from that point forward, we need to just watch and see what happens. Helena is actually growing at a more rapid rate, but as of right now, Helena's path is expected to come up in this direction based on the other pressures going on in the Atlantic Ocean. So, not that we're not going to watch these storms, but we really have to focus on Florence at the moment as it is becoming a direct threat to the U.S. coast. And it's very important that everyone understands this, that it's becoming a much more serious situation than it was, say, a week ago when people didn't know if it was going to stay out in the ocean or if it was going to come up to the northeast. Basically, the top-notch, the National Hurricane Center, the meteorologists, all the professionals, they all believe that this storm will, in fact, be a pretty significant situation for all these areas here. And you can see some of the plots do bring it up to the Chesapeake Bay, so that is not out of the question. But also, like I said, I want you guys to watch this chart one more time. As Florence moves through those ridge pressures we showed that one ridge right here, and we showed another ridge right here, which is going to force Florence a little bit south, and then it's going to push it in this direction here. And that is when they're expecting this moisture here to form basically another pressure bubble that's going to be right around this area. And that is what is going to keep either Florence pinned down south, becoming an issue for the southern states, or if it's going to move out more into the Atlantic Ocean, allowing it to hook a little more north, putting North Carolina and Virginia at more risk than, let's say, the middle of Florida and Georgia. Regardless, this storm is big enough that it's going to be pulling a lot of this moisture down and spinning it in that counterclockwise range and putting it all over these coasts. So, in my opinion, based on all the data we have as of right now and being 5 days out, we really need to start focusing on these charts that are being provided to us. This is one of the charts I don't like to see because we were expecting this storm to get past those shear winds and then grow, but a lot more than just this chart is showing this thing rapidly intensifying, possibly being a Category 4 by the time we have to deal with a landfall issue or even a skim or even the storm sitting out off the coast just spinning around as some of the models showed that we looked at before. So that's our latest update, guys. We really need to start preparing for this storm. I will be all over it as usual. I will keep you updated as any bit of new information comes in. But the next especially the next 48 hours, we are really going to get a detailed track on where this storm is going to go. And that's when you're going to start seeing your local areas talk about evacuation routes and things of that nature if that becomes the case. So that's where we're at right now, guys. I will be back. I want to make an update for this evening. I do have a few things I need to handle, so this may be pushed off to the morning. But regardless, you will be able to rely on me to get your info for this storm until it is completely gone, and then we will talk about what happens afterwards with those storms behind it as far as Isaac and Helena. All right, guys, thank you once again for listening. We really appreciate your support, and we hope everyone is safe and stay dry. The entire right half of the country is just being saturated right now, and Florence is going to be absolutely no help whatsoever. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much. We will talk soon. Have a great day. Bye bye.